The sound that night wasn't natural, not the rustle of deer or the coyote yips I was used to. This was heavier, deliberate, steel on gravel. Then the lights cut out. I froze. For a few seconds, the cabin was dead silent except for the low hum that used to come from my solar battery in the crawl space. That hum was gone. Power, cut. I stepped to the window, slow and quiet, like I used to during patrols back in Kandahar. Pulled the curtain just a crack. 3 men, no uniforms, all black clothes, 2 with flashlights, 1 holding what looked like a pry bar. They weren't here to talk. Funny thing is, I knew they were coming. The last week had been one long warning shot after another. HOA notices with no headers, mysterious compliance letters, and yesterday, a friendly stranger who said he was from the community beautification team and wanted to measure my fence for symmetry. You ever had that itch? That instinct that crawls up your spine and tells you someone's about to make a real bad mistake? So, yeah, I was waiting. The second the first boot hit my porch, I hit the remote. Instantly, the whole tree line behind the cabin exploded in light. Flood lamps, sirens, an old rigged motion system I'd set up years ago for coyotes, repurposed for bigger predators. They jumped. One dropped his flashlight. The guy with the pry bar yelled something about wrong house. They scattered fast, but not before my trail cams got every angle, faces, plates. Even the guy who tripped over the fence post, I left half buried. Amateur hour. Let me back up. I'm Roy, retired electrical engineer, widower. Moved out here 6 years ago after my wife passed. This cabin was our dream before cancer stole her. I made it real, alone, quiet, remote. Nothing but hills, trees, and the occasional fox stealing from my compost. That peace lasted 2 years. Then came the development. Big real estate deal carved up the valley just south of my land. Up popped rows of matchbox homes, one after another, and with them, a brand new homeowner association. I wasn't part of it. My property line's a full half-mile from their border. But that didn't stop the letters. Visual pollution was the first term they used. Then, non-standard structure. And my personal favorite, aesthetically incompatible perimeter fencing. I ignored them. Then came the stranger at the gate. Friendly smile, clipboard, asking to check dimensions. I said no. He didn't like that. Next morning, my dog's water bowl had bleach in it. That was the first time I saw red. What would you do if someone tried to poison the last living thing that still looks at you like you matter? I didn't go to the police. I knew better. They were getting pressure too. HOA sponsored a local sheriff campaign. Guess who won? Suddenly my calls started getting misplaced. So I started prepping. Not with guns, not with traps. I'm a systems guy. I built a defense, cameras, alarms, timers, a few smart tricks. And I waited. That night, that was their first mistake. But what came after? I never expected how far they'd go, and who would turn against me. They didn't come back the next night, or the one after that. But you know that kind of silence that isn't peace? The kind that feels like something's hiding in the tall grass, just out of sight? Yeah, that kind. So I kept the lights up, kept the timers rolling. I didn't sleep, just sat at the window with my coffee, shotgun nearby, watching shadows stretch and shrink. By the 4th night, I found a drone hovering over my garden, no markings. Quiet little bastard, just buzzing there like a fly with too much confidence. I knocked it out of the sky with a shovel and threw it in the old burn barrel. 2 hours later, a black SUV idled on the public road outside my gate. Didn't come in, didn't honk, just parked there, headlights off, watching. They wanted to make me paranoid, wanted me jumpy, tired, and maybe mad enough to do something dumb. Thing is, I'd already been there. After my wife died, I spent a whole year thinking I was going crazy. You don't scare a man who's already been to hell and built a cabin to live in it. But they didn't stop. A week passed. I thought maybe they gave up. Then I got a call from the county assessor. Suddenly, there was a review of my land use permit. Said I might be operating a commercial storage structure. What commercial structure? My tool shed? The same one I built with my own hands? Turns out someone had filed an anonymous complaint with photos. They'd gotten into my land again. That was the first crack. I felt it. This wasn't just scare tactics. This was a campaign, coordinated, calculated, and whoever was behind it had access, money, and patience. I needed help. Only person I trusted within 10 miles was Ted, former Army like me, lived 2 ridges over, quiet guy, liked restoring motorcycles and drinking his beer warm. We met back when I first moved out and needed help getting the old septic line dug up. He didn't ask questions then, and he didn't now. I showed him the photos, the footage, even the bleach-burned water bowl I kept tucked away in a box like a bad memory. He looked at all of it, took a deep breath, and said, "You're being boxed." I didn't know the term. Apparently, it's what they used to call it overseas when a unit or target was slowly surrounded, cut off from resources, allies, hope. Not an ambush, a squeeze. That night, Ted helped me bury motion detectors at the fence line. Not for animals, for people. Then he left me with a burner phone and a warning. Don't trust the obvious enemy, but don't trust your neighbors either. One of them's feeding this. I laughed, told him I barely knew my neighbors. He didn't laugh back. Next morning, I went into town, needed supplies, gloves, more batteries, and something a little more assertive. The guy at the hardware store gave me a look when I asked about infrared sensors, but he didn't say a word. Folks out here may not help you directly, but they sure as hell understand when someone's under siege. That's when I saw her. Karen, not a nickname, that was her actual name, Karen Whitmore, president of the Homeowner Association, blonde helmet hair, floral blouse, and a smile that could cut barbed wire. She was in line ahead of me, didn't see me at first, but when she did, her expression didn't even twitch. She just turned sweet as syrup and said, "Oh, Roy, I didn't expect to see you here. How's the compound?" I forced a grin. "Still mine, still legal. How's the suburban empire?" She leaned in, lowered her voice. "You know, some folks would be happier if you weren't around. There are safety concerns." "And safety," I said, "usually improves when people stay off private property." She blinked, then smiled again. Good chat. I watched her leave, phone already at her ear. 10 seconds later, the black SUV rolled by the front window. That's when I knew. This wasn't about zoning or fences. It wasn't even about me. It was about control. My land stood in the way of something bigger, something they weren't ready to show just yet. But they would, soon. And I had to be ready when they did. I didn't go home right away. Something about the way Karen smiled had crawled under my skin like a tick. I parked behind the diner, sat in the truck for a while, just watching folks come and go. Most of them didn't even notice me. Just another old guy in a beat-up Ford with dusty boots and a 1,000-yard stare. But I noticed them. Every wave, every glance, every sudden silence when I walked past lately, it all added up to something. You ever feel like the room goes quiet just a second too long when you walk in? That's what paranoia tastes like. And in my case, it was earned. When I finally drove back up the ridge, the sun was already slipping behind the trees, shadows long and sharp. I slowed down near my gate and saw the fence post had been snapped clean. Not bent, not cracked, cut. Someone had been back. Inside the gate, the ground looked undisturbed, but I noticed the tiniest glint on the gravel, a piece of black plastic, corner of a walkie-talkie maybe, or a dropped clip. I took it inside, dusted it off, and added it to the growing collection of gifts left behind. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the attic. That's where I kept her things, my wife's, old quilts, books she loved, a half-finished watercolor, and under it all, the metal case, locked, taped shut with a note I wrote to myself a decade ago. Only if they push you off the edge. Well, guess what? Inside the case, one field recorder, 2 old IDs, and a thick envelope marked leverage. Back in the day, I did more than engineering, contract work, surveillance systems, quiet installs for loud clients. I never talked about it because I was good at it. And the people who needed my work liked things quiet. But I kept a few souvenirs, things that might come in handy, and right now, I needed leverage. I spent the next 3 nights setting up. You ever run fiber cable through dry brush at 2 a.m. with nothing but a red lens flashlight? It ain't glamorous. It's crawling, bleeding, swearing at roots and thorns. But when it was done, I had eyes, not just on my land, but on the ridge where the HOA's patrol liked to park, on the trail they used to sneak in, on the mailbox Karen sent her letters from. Yeah, I wired the whole damn hill. And that's when I saw it. They were building something. Just past the HOA line, a dozen workers in reflective vests were laying concrete. No signs, no permits posted. Just quiet, fast construction behind tarps and hedges. Like they were trying to hide it. Ted came over the next day. I showed him the footage. "That's not just some maintenance shed," he said. "That's prep." "Prep for what?" He didn't answer, just stared at the screen, then at me. "You know they're going to try again." "Let 'em. I'm done playing defense." Ted didn't smile, but he nodded, then said something that stuck with me. "The more light you shine, the more shadows they throw. Be ready for that." Later that night, I got a call from a blocked number. "Mr. McAllister, this is Officer Reed. We received reports of you brandishing weapons towards city workers." "The city workers don't sneak through private land at 4 a.m., officer." "You can make a statement downtown." I hung up. They weren't just pushing now, they were baiting me. I needed to push back, but not the way they expected, not with guns or calls or paperwork. I needed to flip the game, show them I wasn't just some crusty old recluse in a cabin. I had eyes, I had proof, and I had nothing left to lose. You ever hit that point where fear stops being a weight and starts being fuel? Next day, I printed 20 stills from my footage, clear faces, Karen included. I drove to the local coffee shop and pinned one to the corkboard near the register. "Trespassers." No names, just images. The buzz started within hours. Whispers, sideways glances. I was no longer invisible, which is exactly what I needed, because the real play was still coming. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one on defense. It only took 2 days. 2 days after I pinned those photos up at the coffee shop, someone slashed the tires on my truck. All 4. Neat, clean cuts, professional. Not some angry neighbor with a kitchen knife, someone who knew rubber. I stood there staring at the carcass of my tires, coffee in hand, and didn't even flinch. Just took a sip and said out loud, "That all you got?" You ever feel that? That burn in your gut where fear used to live? Where the only thing keeping you standing is spite? Yeah, that's where I was. I patched the tires enough to limp back up the hill. When I got home, the mailbox was open. Someone had stuffed a printed note inside. No envelope, just a piece of paper that said, "This can end now. Comply." No signature, no contact, just a threat wearing a polite face. I called Ted. He showed up in less than an hour carrying a box. "Trail spikes," he said, "for the road behind your cabin, just in case they get creative." We laid them that evening, then sat on the porch, drinking coffee, staring out at the trees like 2 old dogs waiting for the storm to come. And come it did. That night, the alarms hit. 3 intrusions simultaneously. North fence, east trail, and, the boldest, right up my gravel driveway. I watched them on the monitors, 5 figures, all in dark jackets, balaclavas. 2 carried what looked like tool bags. The others had flashlights. One had a crowbar. They weren't just looking to scare me this time. They were coming in. I activated the flood lamps again. Sirens, motion-triggered sprinklers sprayed the drive, but they didn't flinch. They kept walking. I grabbed my field recorder, clicked it on, and started narrating. Time, 2:12 a.m. 5 individuals approaching private property. No insignia, no announcement. Attempted breach in progress. Then I opened the front door, stepped out onto the porch, unarmed, voice steady. "You're on camera. You are trespassing. You are not authorized." They paused. One of them said something muffled, then kept coming. That's when I threw the first flashbang. Military surplus. Old, but effective. Not lethal, just loud, bright, and enough to make someone question every life choice that led to this moment. It went off in the gravel like a lightning strike. 2 of them dropped. 1 ran. I didn't chase. Ted, who had been hidden behind the side shed, emerged with his own camera and flashlight. We recorded everything. Faces, license plate, even the guy who pissed himself when the second bang went off near the propane tank. By the time the sheriff showed up, they were gone, all but the gear they dropped. The deputy looked bored, barely took notes, said it was probably some kids messing around. "Kids don't bring lockpicks and grounding straps," I told him. He shrugged. "No harm done. You didn't shoot him, so that's something." No report, no follow-up. That's when it hit me. Law wasn't coming, not for me. I wasn't part of their HOA bubble. I was a glitch, an exception they wanted erased, not resolved. And if the law wouldn't help me, then I needed to do something they couldn't ignore. So I went nuclear, figuratively. I printed every still, every clip, every time-stamped record I had, dozens of pages. I mailed them to one place, the state licensing board, not the police, not the county, the state. Because two of the men I caught on camera, I recognized them. Electricians, licensed by the state, and they were trying to tamper with my power box. That's not vandalism, that's a crime, and one that puts their license in the crosshairs. You want to shake a tree? Hit it where the fruit grows. But I didn't stop there. Next morning, I called in a favor. A buddy of mine from my contracting days, name's Ellis, lives 2 counties over now, runs his own private inspection firm. Quiet guy, owes me from way back when I pulled his brother out of a bad deal overseas. Ellis came out 2 days later, did a full drone sweep of the HOA construction site. Thermal scans, structural mapping, even license plate logs. What he found? Let's just say it wasn't up to code. No permits, no inspections. And, here's the kicker, they were building less than 20 feet from a protected watershed. That made it a state issue. He sent the report to a few agencies, quietly. And suddenly things started shaking. Not in public, not yet. But I got the first ripple when the HOA sent me a new letter, hand-delivered. No threats this time, no ultimatums. Just 5 words. Let's find a resolution, neighbor. You ever see a snake smile? That's what it felt like. Because I knew something they didn't. I wasn't looking for resolution anymore. I was hunting reckoning. I didn't reply to that letter, didn't call, didn't text, didn't blink. Because I already knew something, most of them didn't. If your enemy sends a peace offering after weeks of pressure, it means one thing. They're not done. They're just changing tactics. So I kept moving. Ellis was already working on tracing materials used in the HOA's off-the-books construction project. Some of the rebar came from a contractor that had already been fined twice for environmental violations. And guess who signed for the delivery? Karen Whitmore. I had the scanned invoice in my inbox within hours. You ever see a plan fall apart one bolt at a time? That's what I was watching. But something kept bothering me. A detail. Something I couldn't put my finger on. Then it hit me. They had stopped coming. No more SUV parked by the gate. No more drones. No more inspectors with clipboards. Nothing for 4 days. It was too quiet. I called Ted. He came over, looked at the monitors, the trail cams, even hiked the back ridge. Nothing. Not a print, not a footprint, not a snapped twig. He didn't like it. Feels like a retreat. Or a reset. And we were both right. That night, around 2 a.m., I woke to a sound I hadn't heard in years. A low rumble, deep, mechanical. I stepped out onto the porch and felt it in the boards under my feet. Not thunder, not wind. Engines. I scanned the tree line. Then I saw the light. A spotlight, bright, mounted high, cutting across the ridge like a searchlight. They were clearing land. At night. I grabbed my binoculars, counted 3 machines, bulldozers, excavators, all working in tandem, clearing the slope just beyond their last construction. Closer to my land. Close enough that the dust was drifting onto my eastern trail. They weren't just building now. They were expanding. I pulled up the drone Ellis left me, sent it up, slow, quiet, keeping low, circled once, took photos. And that's when I saw it. Wooden stakes, orange flags, labeled with new lot numbers, half of them less than 50 feet from my fence line. They were planning to annex my land, not legally, not officially, but in practice. Sell around it, build around it, force me out by choking me with HOA rules they had no right to apply. I felt something boil in my chest. Not fear, not even anger. Resolve. Because they just made the mistake of forgetting who I used to be. Let me back up a second. When I left my old job, the one I don't talk much about, I didn't just retire. I cashed out. Years of contracts, hazard bonuses, and yes, a few extra zeros from projects that never made it into the books. I put most of it into land, this cabin, and a few off-grid investments. I've lived simple, but I'm not broke. And I had one last card to play. I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. Her name was Claire Benton. Used to work for a defense firm that handled high-dollar property disputes. We met years ago when she was still clerking. I helped her father install a power system for his mountain cabin. She said if I ever needed a favor, I should call. I told her what was happening, sent the files, the footage, the environmental scans, everything. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "They're trying to box you out. Classic squeeze. But they made one mistake." "Yeah?" "They left fingerprints." Within 48 hours, she had filed 3 separate complaints, 2 with the State Environmental Agency, 1 with the Utilities Board, and she was just getting started. "Let them build 1 inch past code," she told me, "and I'll bury them in injunctions." But I didn't just rely on Claire. While she worked the legal angles, I worked the social ones. See, Karen liked control. She liked being the face of the HOA, which meant she liked attention, spotlights, applause. So I gave her some. I printed flyers, black and white. Simple headline, "Is this who represents our community?" Below that, a still of her from my footage, mid-scream, face twisted in rage, arm outstretched as she ordered the others forward. I posted them around town. Not too many, just enough. Post office, library, bulletin board, at the diner. And then I waited. 2 days later, the HOA held an emergency board meeting. Not public, of course, but word gets around. Ted knew someone who lived in the subdivision, said there was shouting. A vote. And one of the board members walked out and never came back. They were cracking, but it still wasn't over. Because the next morning, I stepped out to find smoke on the east side of my property. Small fire, not spreading fast, but it was burning right near my old storage shed. I ran, grabbed the extinguisher, got it out before it jumped to the trees. But inside the shed, the motion camera was gone, the hard drive smashed. That was their message. They knew they were losing, and they were ready to burn everything to the ground before they let me win. What would you do if someone tried to erase you piece by piece? Me? I set the final plan in motion. It started with a smile. I woke up the next morning, poured my coffee, and just stood there on the porch watching the mist roll off the treetops. Ted was already down at the creek checking the tripwires. Claire texted me that the environmental agency had launched an official investigation, and me, I felt calm, not safe, not done, but calm. Because my plan wasn't about revenge. It was about exposure. I spent that day assembling a box, not a metaphor, a real cardboard box, taped tight, with a thumb drive inside and a typed note on top. All footage, all evidence. You have 48 hours to respond, or the next copy goes public. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. I drove it down to the HOA clubhouse myself, walked up the steps like I belonged there, left it by the front door. No cameras, no confrontation. Just a little package of truth dropped at their feet. You ever hold your breath for 2 straight days? That's what it felt like. Then, right on time, Karen showed up. She didn't come alone. Pulled up in a pearl-white Escalade with 2 men in suits. They didn't get out. She did. Marched right up my path in heels like she owned the gravel. I met her halfway. "Roy," she said, voice clipped, "we need to talk." "We don't. You're escalating this." I folded my arms. "No, I'm ending it." She glanced toward the house. "You really want this to go public? Think that helps anyone?" "Helps me just fine." Karen took a breath. First sign of a crack. Her hand trembled. Not a lot, just enough. Then she said something I never thought I'd hear. "What do you want?" Not said with kindness, not even fear, just exhaustion. I let that hang, let her feel it. Then I said, "You step back. You shut down that expansion. You call off your dogs. And you issue a letter, publicly, stating my land is private, independent, and outside your authority, permanently." She stared, calculating. "And if I don't?" "Then your donors see what you authorized. Your contractors lose licenses. Your friends on the board get named. And you go down as the HOA president who sent masked men to intimidate a widower." The silence stretched. Then she smiled, but it was hollow now. "Fine." She turned, walked back to her car. Didn't look at me again. The Escalade rolled off slow. Ted stepped out from behind the porch, chewing sunflower seeds. That it? Not yet. Because I knew her type. Karen wasn't finished. She was regrouping. So I released the footage anyway. Not to the public, not to the news. To the residents. I burned 20 DVDs, old school, no way to trace who sent them. Dropped them in mailboxes up and down the ridge. Every home in the HOA got one. And inside, everything. The footage, the construction violations, the masked trespassers, the threats, even the environmental scans. I didn't need them to rise up. I just needed them to see. By the end of the week, 5 homes had put up for sale signs. 2 board members resigned. And Karen, she vanished. No official notice, no big scene, just gone. Her house sat empty for 3 days, then a moving truck pulled in. No one said goodbye. But that wasn't the end. One morning, a man in a crisp blue jacket showed up at my gate. Badge, clipboard. Mr. McAllister, I'm with the State Department of Water Resources. You filed a complaint? Sure did. He smiled. Thought you should know. The development's under formal review. Might get paused for months, maybe permanently. I didn't smile back, just nodded, then asked him one thing. Is anyone going to lose their job over this? He shrugged. That's up to them. As he left, I walked back up the hill, slow, past the shed, past the ridge, past the scorched ground where the fire had tried to eat my land. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't look over my shoulder. Funny thing is, when peace finally comes, it doesn't feel like a parade. It feels like silence, stillness, like the woods are breathing again. But peace has a cost, and I paid it in time, fear, and scars you can't see. You ever win something and still feel like something got carved out of you? That's the part they don't tell you. But I still had one thing they never understood. The land was mine, and I wasn't going anywhere. Spring came late that year. Not on the calendar, but in the way the birds started to return, in the thaw of the creek, in how the wind finally stopped carrying smoke and started carrying pine again. I remember sitting on the back steps, coffee in hand, boots in the dirt, just listening. I hadn't heard true quiet in months. Funny how you miss things you didn't know were gone. The sound of frogs at night, the rustle of deer in the brush. Even my own breath felt different. Ted still stopped by once a week. We didn't talk about the HOA anymore. That part was done. The construction had stalled out completely. The equipment was gone. Half the lot stayed empty, flagged and forgotten. And no one so much as walked near my fence since Karen disappeared. But the story never really left me. See, folks around town started treating me different. Not better, not worse. Just cautious. Some nodded. Some crossed the street. Others started locking their gates tighter. I wasn't the ghost anymore. I was the guy who stood up to them. And that came with weight. You ever win a fight and feel like you lost the room? I did, but it didn't break me. Because something else started to happen too. Quiet things. One day, I found a crate of apples on my porch. No note. Another time, a local kid came up, asking if I could show him how to set up a trail cam. Said his dad heard I was the camera guy. I laughed, a real one. But inside, I knew what was really happening. The fear was shifting. The HOA had ruled by rules, by form letters, by threat of fines. And when that didn't work on me, they sent fists in the dark. What I sent back was light. Evidence, exposure, truth. And truth is a strange thing. It doesn't shout. It whispers. It spreads. It lives in the space between what people know and what they admit. And once it's out there, you can't stuff it back in the box. Claire called me one more time, just to say the official investigation had wrapped. No charges, no arrests. But the HOA had been fined. Karen had been blacklisted from any community leadership role for 10 years. That was the system's version of justice. Mine had already happened. Ted and I rebuilt the burned shed. Better, stronger, reinforced walls, new camera grid. I didn't do it out of paranoia. I did it as a reminder. Scars don't mean you're broken, they mean you fought. You ever walk the perimeter of your life and feel like it's yours again? That's how it felt. Some nights, I still sit on that porch and watch the tree line. Habit, instinct. But these days, I do it with a dog curled at my feet. a rifle gathering dust, and a heart that finally stopped racing at every twig snap. This land nearly broke me, but it also saved me. Because when you fight for something with everything you have, you don't just protect it. You become part of it. And no one, not even a homeowner association with money, lawyers, and power, can take that away. So, if you're listening to this and you feel like the odds are stacked, like no one's coming, like the shadows are closing in, just know I've been there. And you're not alone. Drop a comment if this hits home. And maybe, just maybe, don't let the first punch be the last word. Not when you know what's yours,